We saw in the previous video how we can make a program print out a letter grade given a student's score in the class. So imagine if we also wanted to print out whether they got an A plus or B plus, C plus or D plus. So let's say 95 and above is an A plus, 85 and above is a B plus, 75 and above is a C plus, and 65 and above is a D plus. So what we can utilize here is nested if statements. So for example, in this first if statement, this goes into this code if the score is greater than or equal to 90. We know 95 and above is also greater than or equal to 90. So we know the code for the 95 plus or the A plus needs to be within this if statement. So we do want to print out that they received an A in the class, but we want to say A plus instead of just A in the class. So in here, we can have an if statement that says if the student score is greater than or equal to 95, then we'll print out the plus sign. But what we could do is add this to the top. And we can take out the new line so that this will be right after, and this will be right after. And then at the very end, what we could do is print out in the class. So what this is going to do is it's going to check if it's greater than 90. It's going to print out the student name received an A. If it's greater than or equal to 90, it'll put plus. And then at the very end, it'll say in the class. So it's going to say in the class whether or not it went in here, right? Because we didn't put an else here. So we're saying student name received an A, then we're going to add the plus, and then we're going to do this if it's 95. If it's not 95, it'll skip this if statement's code, but it'll continue executing below. Keep in mind that the code continues to keep executing below. So for example, once all these if statements are done and the else statements, if I put goodbye, it's going to print out goodbye. So once it evaluates what code it has to go into, no matter what if or else statement you end up in or what you skip or what you don't skip in here, it's still going to print out goodbye at the very end because the code is going to continue executing afterwards. So we do ignore else statements under if we get into if statements, but we don't ignore any other code that comes afterwards. Any code that doesn't pertain to these conditions will still continue executing at the end. So that's what we're kind of seeing within this if statement here. So it starts here and it ends here, and we have this if statement here. If we would have put an else here and then put this code in there, then we would run into the issue where it would only print out in the class if this if statement didn't happen. But we always want it to print out in the class. So we're going to have to remove this from the else and keep it here. So we're going to go ahead and run this and see if it works. Let me hide this and run. So we're going to put Christina and we're going to put a 95. So it should say Christina received an A plus in the class. Again, we have this spacing issue, so I'm just going to go ahead and put a space right here and it should make it look nicer. So let me go ahead and run that one more time. And there we go, A plus, and we also have the goodbye that's at the end of our code. So now I'm going to try just a 90 and make sure that if I put a 90, it does not print the A plus, and it just prints out A. Christina received an A in the class. So you could do the same kind of logic for the rest of them. You could say if the score is greater than or equal to 85 within this code, and just sort of do the same thing here. You just change it to 85. Here you take out the B in the class. received a B. So you take out the in the class, take out the print line, and then at the very end, you add in the class, and this should work as well. Since it's the same code, we're just checking the greater than or equal to 85. Keep in mind that there's multiple ways to do this sort of logic. You don't have to use if-else sentences and else-if statements in here. You could theoretically do code like this that says if the student score is greater than or equal to 90, then of course we print out. Let me just go ahead and copy and paste this here. Now, instead of doing an else here, you could theoretically also just do another if statement. That says if it's less than 90 and it's greater than 79, then we know we're in the B section. So instead of doing an else here, you could say that it's less than whatever this was, so it didn't go in here, and that it's greater than whatever greater than 79, so it won't go into the 70 code. So instead of writing all this code up here, you could have done it this way as well, where you say if the student score is greater than or equal to 90 for the A case, if the score is less than 90 or greater than 79 for the B scenario, if you don't want to use the else statements. So there are different ways you could do this and solve the problem. So remember, when you're coding, there's multiple ways you can solve whatever problem you're trying to solve. So don't be alarmed if your code looks very different from someone else's, but behaves exactly the same. One more note to make is that this program right now only takes into account one student. Imagine if you had 100 students or whatever number of students are in the class. You wouldn't want to copy and paste this code every time over and over again. But theoretically, it would work to just copy and paste this as many times as you need. And of course, you'd have to change the variable names because you can't use the same variable names in here once they've been declared. And you could theoretically do this a million times for however many students you have. However, there is something in Java coding called iteration that'll just loop through your code and repeat some lines of code over and over again as many times as you want until some sort of condition is no longer true. So what iteration lets you do is write a bunch of code one time that'll repeat multiple times. So you don't have to copy and paste a bunch of times. You could just run the one code in a loop over and over again until some condition is met, like the students entered all the grades or there's no more students in the class. So for the next couple videos, I'm going to sort of explain what this iteration is and how we can do it and how we can implement it in our program that we just wrote right now.